There is so much death metal this year, it's going to take multiple videos to get through it all.
It's too much! It's too much!
Today we are ranking 25 death metal albums from 2024, and we're starting with Apogean with Cyberstrictive. This is the latest project featuring Max Smith, who has done killer vocals for Croesus, Alter Beast, and Hammer of Dawn. I'm a big fan of what he brings to the table, and it just is gnarly, technical, great brutality, but also melodic riffing, some irresistible grooves, dizzying guitar work, just expertly woven into some great progressive songwriting too. This is going to perfection. Next up we have Master with Saints Dispelled. This band was formed in Chicago in 1983, but currently located in Czechia, apparently. Saints Dispelled is their 15th album, and it still brings that early thrash and D-beat-infused sound, leading some to call them the Motorhead of death metal. Riffs come fast and hard alongside a vocal performance where every syllable sounds like Paul just spewing vomit on the stage. Fun if a little repetitive and fairly familiar, so I put it at good tier. Next up we have Exocrine with Legend. Big fan of this French tech death band, and already on album 6, so pretty prolific at this point. Each album seems to pretty much get better and better too. Chaotic but always infectious guitar work and the occasional explosion of saxophone on here too. So this is another must listen for modern death metal. Compositions run the gamut from techie groovers to more, again, progressive and also introspective territory on tracks like Dragon, and even some kind of like symphonic moments as well. Not my like favorite from them overall, but I have not had an album from them that I haven't really enjoyed. It's going to fantastic. Then we have Engulf with The Dying Planet Weeps. Engulf is basically what you get when you combine OSDM vocals a la John Tardy and Morbid Angel grooves with the more technical and dissonant instrumentation of Gorguts and Ulcerate. It's a very unsettling listen, ripe with sudden pace changes and some more lurching, churning guitar work, and as if that's not good enough on its own, you can also add an impressive list of guest musicians from Darkened, Aborted, Alluvial, Hideous Divinity, Near Death Condition, among others. Some of them we will be talking about in this very list, but this is going to amazing. Then we have Pestilength with Solar Clorex. Truly sickening stuff in this third album from this band out of Spain. Vocals sounding like a giant gurgling and just hacking up of bile alongside lurching, doomy guitars that are equally nauseating. Then there's some surprising softer sections as well, though. I could draw some mild comparisons to Artificial Brain and Afterbirth, but this is still kind of its own thing. Very interesting. A little bit on the slower side sometimes, though, for my taste, but I'm intrigued by the unique atmosphere. It also went to good tier. Then we have Vitriol with Suffer and Become. This Portland band bringing performances that are not only insanely technical, but also stupid heavy and menacing as fuck. I've seen them live and can attest to, like, they do perform this exactly how it sounds on the album, and it is pretty insane to watch. I will say that sometimes it gets dense to the point of being a little bit berating, but I think this album did a good job of stepping up the kind of dynamics. There's even some like subtle choral synths and atmospheric sections, and so it's not quite just like 11 brr the entire time, and people are loving it. I see a lot of people shouting this out as one of their favorites of the year. For me, I put it at fantastic. Then we have Drowned with Procul His. While this may only be this German death metal band's second full-length album, it's their first in 10 years and comes after a long line of demos and EPs going all the way back to 1993, and the raw production and songwriting choices here make it sound as if it was written and recorded from that era. There are some cool passages with the interplay of more atmospheric and even like black metal sounding guitars and ferocious drumming, but I'm very distracted by the kind of one-note growly vocal performance that feels also very forward in the mix to me. I know Chris, who does the written reviews on metaltrenches.com, like this a lot more than me, but For me, it just went to meh. By the way, if y'all are enjoying the video so far, as always, hit the like button. It really helps me out in the algorithm, as does commenting below what are your favorite and least favorite death metal albums of the year so far. But let's move along to Resin with Cerebral Purgatory. This Australian band has been making a name for itself over their EPs, and this is now their first full length, and they delivered on the same promise as those EPs. This is just gnarly, noisy stuff that feels like a cross between that classic HM2 Swedish sound with the more atonal technical stuff like, again, Artificial Brain and even Krallis too. Disgusting bass tone. Room to tighten up the songwriting a little bit, but I think these guys have a bright future ahead. I also put them at fantastic. Then we have Unaussprechlichen Kulten with Häxan Sabaoth. This Chilean death metal band has been at it for almost 25 years and continue to bring only the darkest of atmosphere with this latest full length. Kind of take Behemoth's The Satanist and crossbreed it with Dispelled Omega and Adversarial, another band we'll be talking about in future versions, but not Part 1, we will get to Adversarial next time. Anyway, seasoned heavily with some pretty shreddy guitar solos and the perfect ratio of death to doom, drawing further comparisons to like Incantation's Diabolical Conquest, which I talked about in our 90s album rankings by year for death metal. This is going to great. Then we have Blood Red Throne with Nonagon. This Norwegian band is celebrating 26 years of existence with their 11th album. A lot of long-timers on here. It's been really cool to kind of like see both the old and the new. Still have a great mix of chugging brutality, Meshuggah-esque grooves, and explosions of melodic death metal leads. I think this is something that can connect and sort of bridge the gap for both modern fans and old school fans alike. It's not the flashiest thing on this list, but I feel like it scratches a similar itch that Suffocation did for me in a big way last year. So it went to amazing. Then we have Cognizance with Phantazein. UK tech death band here around since 2012. This is their third record following up 2021's Upheaval, and I would most recommend it to fans of techy yet melodic stuff like Inferi and First Fragment. Really impressive instrumentation, but again, kind of woven into pretty engaging songwriting. Standouts for me in particular, Shadowgraph, Futureless Horizon, and In Verses Unspoken. Crazy, crazy drumming, but these guys all work together as a well-oiled machine. It is another fantastic. It has been a strong year for death metal, so it's been hard to figure out what fits in the top tiers, but there was a lot early on that already took those spots. Speaking of which, we have Knoll with As Spoken.
Holy shit.
This Tennessee band brings some death metal energy, but alongside also some grindy, dark stuff like Full of Hell. It's like you combine Lord Mantis, Portal, Alterage, and Vermin Womb with like some Imperial Triumphant for good measure. Just a spiraling vortex into oblivion. The guitars are like swarming locusts more so than instruments, and yeah, just disgusting stuff. I've enjoyed their previous work too, but this was like my first big wow moment of 2024. So this landed at perfection. Some might call this more of a grind album, but I think there's more than enough death metal in there. All right, we have Morta SKuld with Creation Undone.
We are forced to adapt. It's a form of control. We are forced to believe.
This Milwaukee, Wisconsin band formed in 1990, and another one on this list crossing an impressive 30-year milestone. It's plenty heavy with a lot of chugging mixed with some more creepy-sounding melodic leads, great drumming too. But another one where a lot of people seem to love it more than I did, because again, my biggest attraction was the vocals. Once more, very one note. Just not a lot of interesting placement in the music to make it more engaging. Like, I just found it kind of dull. So unfortunately, this landed at meh for me. Another long timer here, we have Messiah with Christus Hypercubus. The 7th album from the Swiss death metal band, and their first full length with new vocalist Markus Seebach after Andy Kana sadly passed away in 2022. If you're looking for death metal that mixes old school heaviness with big atmosphere, this is likely going to be right up your alley. Personally though, I didn't find myself connecting with this one as much as some of their earlier albums. There's some elements with this band where it's like it's either really great or kind of really boring to me, but they're still bringing a lot of that 90s death metal energy. I put this one at good. Then we have Hideous Divinity with Unextinct. This is a band I've been following since 2017's Excellent Advenians, but this Italian tech death crew has been kicking around since actually 2007. Much like I said of Vitriol's album, their sound is incredibly dense and menacing, so much so that it can be also off-putting on the first listen. Sort of combine that with the grandiosity of fellow Italians' Flesh God Apocalypse, and you kind of have an approximation of their sound. They're not nearly as like symphonic and bombastic, but there's just some of that energy there. I don't think this is some of their best songwriting, but it's heavy as hell and the bass rips, I put it at great. Then we have VLTIMAS with Epic.
They suffer in silence. No word says that's not the first to go.
I almost considered not including this because it didn't feel like a very death metal album, but it's got members of Cryptopsy, Mayhem, and of course David Vincent of Morbid Angels, so it seemed weird to leave it out. I know they've previously been described as blackened death metal. There's like a touch of that here, but not really. I was, again, put off by the vocals here. I think his interesting, let's call it, half heavy metal vibrato growls are certainly going to be an acquired taste for new listeners, and look, I love David Vincent. I love Where the Slime Lives. I love Domination era, Morbid Angel, but this just did not do it for me, so it went to meh.
You blew it!
Then we have Petrifaction with Sever Sacred Light. The second album from another Portland death metal band, one I'd say most closely compares to Autopsy, but they also list influences that include Bolt Thrower, Coffins, and Demigod. Super old school, and I appreciate that they keep the death to doom ratio about 80-20, allowing for solid dynamics, but aggression above all else. It's brutal, it's caveman-like, and the pounding drums only further add to the primitive vibe. I'm putting this one at great tier as well. Then we have Contaminated with Celebratory Beheading. Another fan favorite here, and I'd say blurg is the key word when it comes to this Australian band. Lots of very cavernous, just gaping maw vocals and a mix of doomy and faster, more technical battering sections. I had one commenter compare it to None So Vile, and I wouldn't go that far given just what a classic that record is, but I do hear why the comparison exists. Not something I found to be the most memorable, but it does have some standout moments like Cosmic Shit Show, and it is definitely heavy above all else, maybe one of the heaviest albums on this list. It went to amazing. Then we have Aborted with Vault of Horrors. These guys have not put out a subpar album since Global Flatline, and this may honestly be among, if not their best. Like, frankly, every song here is fantastic. Just great start to finish flow. Emphasis on speed and heaviness, but masterfully broken up with some melodic and atmospheric parts on here as well. And their biggest list of guest spots to date, with someone on every track. We're talking members of Shadow of Intent, Flesh God Apocalypse, Angelmaker, Cryptopsy, Ingested, Engulf, Signs of the Swarm, Of Sulfur, Despised Icon, and my personal favorite, Archspire. This one went to perfection. Then we have Coffin Curse with the Continuous Nothing. This is the second album from this Chilean band, following up 2020's Cease to Be. Nice emphasis again on speed and somewhat blackened sounding guitar tremolos alongside raging D beats and extremely raucous bass. Also love the gnarly kind of burpy vocals. On the flip side, I'm not as in love with the doom elements, and most songs feel like they drag on about a minute or two too long. So yeah, this one a little bit mixed, so it landed around the middle at great. Then there's Suffer with Grand Canvas of the Aesthete. Suffer formed all the way back in 1989, dropping a few demos and a compilation in the 90s, but it wasn't until 2015 that they dropped a full length, following up that with an EP last year and now their sophomore effort, which feels like a perfect fusion of the current 2020 sound with plenty of Carcass as well as notes of Morbid Angel's Domination grooves. Songs could be a little bit tighter, with them often feeling a little bit repetitious. Again, after like 3 minutes or so, it gets a little bit, stretched out more than it needs to be, but other than that, I really enjoyed this. It went to amazing. We also have Devotion with Astral Catacombs. This band was formed in Spain back in 2012, with this being their third album. More very classic old school vibes I'd compare to like early Obituary, Bolt Thrower, and Grave. Lots of slower and mid-pace romps through sewer sludge, grooves broken up by skank beats. Pretty solid, just also very meat and potatoes, and I don't really love the vocal delivery, so it went to okay. Then we have Atoll with Inhuman Implants. Just a year after the already impressive Human Extract, this Arizona brutal death metal band is back with their fifth punishing record, and everyone here contributes to the fantastically crushing violence of this record. But I have to once more highlight the sickening jangle of the bass tone. Much like bands like Cytotoxin, they just take that foundation of sheer blunt force trauma and craft it into something that is strangely catchy. So this one went to fantastic. I'd put it pretty high up too. And we have the return of Necrophobic with In Twilight Grey. This Swedish band formed in 1998, and we've covered a few of their early albums on the 90s Death Metal Ranking by Year series. This is their 10th album, and it's kind of a mixed bag. There are some elements of this that genuinely bored me, which was surprising because I like a lot of their albums, especially their earlier stuff. Like, I think they have a stellar debut and then some other really strong ones mixed in there. And this is another album I saw a lot of people raving about the month that it came out, but I tried. I went back to it multiple times, and I didn't fall in love with it the same way other people did, but I still think it's quite good. So it went to great, but honestly, I could even argue putting it down to good. And then we have Job for a Cowboy with Moon Healer. After a decade, they did not let us down with this comeback. That can be a risky proposition after being away for so long and having expectations sky high, but I think that they met all of them. I'd say this album's like a cross between Rivers of Nile, Inanimate Existence, and the Black Dahlia Murder, just ripping into the guitar. Love Naveen Koperweiss's work on the drums too. You might know him from Entheos, and then Johnny still killing it on the vocals. Incredible album. You might have seen it on my best of 2024 metal albums so far list. It is going to perfection. Y'all check out this playlist for more death metal rankings, or this one for more of my thoughts on 2024 albums. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.